Welcome to The Sample, a quick discussion of auditing concepts and terms that will help you do your work. Conducting an audit in accordance with auditing standards is no small feat, and I want to support you. We'll be referring to the GAO, IIA, and AICPA literature to bolster our conversations. Let's get started.
In this special episode of The Sample, Lita talks to Charles Hall, CPA. Charles Hall has worked in CPA firms for most of his career and is an expert on AICPA standards. Charles is a clear and entertaining writer and offers several self-study courses through Yellowbook CPE. Charles has his own podcast and allowed us to use this footage on our site as well. In this session, Charles and Lita talk about quality management standards.
Today we're going to talk about quality management. As you probably already know, the AICPA has issued some massive quality management standards. I've got those here. I've been sleeping with these, not a lot of fun, but there's a lot of stuff here, isn't there, Lita? And then
if you put it under your pillow, does it really?
It just makes these funny noises when I do that, so I'll try not to. But the Yellowbook, it sleeps better, so I can put this up under my head and it works better. So
I've been living and breathing this thing too, to try to understand, because the Yellowbook just copied the AICPA standards.
Right. And what you and I have been talking some about the Yellowbook, and is it the same as AICPA? You want to say anything about that now?
As far as I can tell, it's pretty much the same, except for there's some terminology differences, but the concepts are the same.
Yeah.
The requirements. Yeah.
Yes. So, when I think about quality management, I think of it in terms of like an alarm system. So like when I'm driving down I-75, if I'm getting out of my lane, my car beeps at me, beep, beep, and I'm like, thank you for beeping. I just almost hit that guy. So it brings me back to where I need to be, and that's really what a quality management, we'll call this a QM system. We used to call it QC for quality control. Yeah, so we're changing some terminology, and in the governmental world, I know, Lita, you do a lot of work with single audits and Yellowbooks. Give me an example of an error that single audit people make.
Yeah, sometimes it revolves around internal control, because when you're doing compliance testing in the single audit, you need to make sure that you identify relevant key internal controls and test those controls.
Right.
And, on the financial side, there's two pieces to the single audit, right? The financial side and the compliance side. On the financial side, you can kind of opt out of internal controls if you want to. Can't do that on the compliance side.
Right.
And so I think clearly labeling, this is a compliance test, this is a control test. And that gets a little fuzzy too in the single audit, because some of the compliance items are actually controls.
Yeah.
But you just have to be really intentional and very clearly document that you satisfied that requirement on the single audit.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually saw that this week in reviewing some of the single audit file. So this is an example of, if you're doing a single audit and you're not documenting the internal controls like Lita just said, if you have a good QM system, you're going to start hearing beep, beep, beep. You'll get some kind of feedback that's going to correct you. And so that's what we're after. A lot of people are looking at this QM change as, oh no. And really the way we should be looking at it is, oh yes, this is going to help me stay in my lane. It's going to help me do what I need to do. So
the way I think about this is a little different. I think it's kind of a karma issue.
Okay.
Because we have been holding our auditees to the internal controls required by the COSO model.
Right, right.
And this is the COSO model applied to us.
I see.
So we expect there to be a risk assessment at the auditee. We expect there to be control activities, information and communication, monitoring, control environment. We expect all these things of the auditee. And now this is just turning that COSO model back on us.
Yes.
So, you can't be hypocritical and ask somebody else to do something that we're not willing to do ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's time to put the shoe on our foot. And Lita was just referencing some items, what we now call components. And this would be, as she just said, kind of like our internal controls. And so you'll see 8 components here. Now, this is out of the SQMS number 1, which is the AICPA standard. You're going to see 6 components where you, if you're in a CPA firm or if you're doing performance audits on the Yellow Book side, you would need to develop quality objectives, quality risk, and quality responses for these 6 areas. And then let's talk about risk assessment, which notice it's outside my red box. So it's a process. So you're not going to develop these 3 things for the process. You're only going to do it for these. Same on monitoring. You won't develop these for monitoring, but you will for these. So let's talk about risk assessment for a minute. Later, when you're working with other CPA firms and they're doing single audits, you just said, hey, sometimes they don't document their internal controls rightly. So if you were helping a CPA firm develop their QM standards, and you're helping them risk assess, how would that work? What would that look like in reference to single audit? And there's probably other areas that you've noticed with single audits that they don't get it right.
Well, it's the same, I call it the trifecta that the GAO and the AICPA call forward every time they want us to think about something. So it's a 3-step process, like understand the subject matter, 2, assess risk, 3, respond.
Yeah.
So we do that for the, the audit. Every time we go audit, we do a risk assessment where we understand things. We do that for fraud.
Yeah.
Right? We have those fraud responsibilities. So, we're used to doing it on an audit project.
Right.
But this is not for the project, it's for the whole firm.
Right.
And so it's not looking at the auditee.
Right.
It's looking at us.
At us.
It's just shifting that same skill that you use to do an audit.
Right.
And just turning the table on your own team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is something we don't have a lot of experience with. I know I've been doing audits for about 40 years. I've never really done a self-assessment of myself. Now, I have looked at quality control, what we used to call quality control processes, and we tried to remediate those, but this is really more holistic in nature. It used to be in the old days, we would see issues like when I would review an audit file, I'd see things that weren't right. I'd make a note of that. But under this new QM standard, you're really looking at, and I'll go back here, you're looking at all of these things holistically. And you're really doing this 24/7. It's not like every moment you're doing this, but it's more hands-on day by day. In the past, it was more, once a year we're going to do an inspection and look at some files. This is, I told Lita before, it's kind of like Captain Kirk sitting in his chair and he's looking out. He's looking for any kind of risk. That's what we're doing as we look at the CPA firm itself. So,
Right.
Lita's done governmental work. How long have you done governmental work? I don't know. Long time. Probably not as long as I have, but a long time. So, because she's got that background and she's seen all the mistakes that people can make, it's easier if you're like her and you've got this experiential knowledge over, several years to, I think, look at yourself and know where your weaknesses are. If you're young and you've been doing audits for 2 or 3 years, you may not have the experiences of falling down like I have many times. And
Me
then
too.
you know where the problems are.
Right.
So don't you think this will be easier for people that have been in public accounting longer than the newer people?
Oh, yeah. But how helpful is it to share this? That was one thing that I didn't enjoy about being a new staff auditor in public accounting, was that I felt like I was being treated like a mushroom sometimes, like kept in the dark and fed poo, right? And not having any idea what's going on.
Yeah.
If you share this risk assessment and you do it alongside your team,
Good
they get
point.
the bigger picture of how all this stuff fits together.
Yeah, great
So
idea.
be a real benefit to doing this for the firm.
Yeah, so if we can bring everybody on the team into this process, everybody is better off.
Oh, yeah.
Even as an older guy that's, I've done this forever, I still learn from the younger people, and we can all do this as we go through this QM process. Now,
Yeah, and they can actually recommend the younger people who are natives to technology can recommend ways that you can put controls in place and respond to these risks that are much more efficient.
Yeah, and one interesting part of this, we talk about resources as a component. A part of resources is personnel, like hiring, but a new part of it is IT, information technology. So
Right.
as Lita was just saying, if you're an old guy like me, you probably need the young people to come tell you about the information technology and how that's going to make your quality management system better.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about who's responsible for this system.
Well, that's
I
new
know-
too. That's
Yeah.
kind of a new thing too, where they're naming specific roles
Right.
that have to do specific things, and that's not the way it looked in the past.
Yeah. It's another interesting change in here, but what we're going to see is, and I'm trying to pull up, I got it now. I'm pulling up the AICPA guidance on this. So the people responsible, you have mainly 2 people. You've got somebody with ultimate responsibility, and I'm going to go to Lita in a moment because this is a little bit different in the Yellow Book.
We call them in the Yellow Book, it's called the senior level official assigned accountability and responsibility for quality is what they call that
Okay.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me see if I can.
A mouthful.
Yeah. So here's chapter 5 in the Yellow Book,
Mm-hmm.
and here's that language for the senior level here.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks a little bit different from the AICPA. Here they say ultimate responsibility.
Yeah.
Over here they say senior level official.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the person with operational responsibility. the senior level person in the AICPA standards, they talk about managing partner or the firm's managing board of partners. Over here in the Yellow Book, it doesn't use that kind of language. So a little bit of a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But then we've got operational responsibility, and that would be like I used to be the QC partner in our firm. So on a day-to-day basis, I would be responsible for making sure the processes work. But at the end of the day, the person with ultimate responsibility, they're going to conclude at the end of the year about whether or not this QM system is working the way that it should.
Does the AICPA make it clear that the operational responsibility thing could be divided up among multiple people?
It does. And actually here, let's see if I can bring this up a little bit. They divide in that step C. They're basically saying, hey, this person can delegate out independence monitoring and also just general monitoring. The monitoring piece is going to be really interesting as you get into this. Pretty complicated. We don't have time to attack that today. But just know that that will be quite different. The one more thing I wanted to show you in the AICPA SQMS number 1, they actually provide you with the objectives. So this process, one, you develop a quality objective, then you develop a quality risk, and then you develop a response. So the AICPA actually gives you the objectives for each component. So you can just grab these straight out of SQMS number 1. There's also some specified responses. You want to use those particular responses. Now, everywhere you've got an objective and a risk and there's not a specified response, that's where you're going to develop yourself what that response would be. So I think we've given this a good go today, Lita. Anything else you want to say before we wind up?
No, I really do think it's a matter of us turning the same expectations we have for our auditees back on ourselves. Okay. Like if we expect them to create quality services and products and implement internal controls, we're just turning that same expectation back on ourselves and applying the same expectations.
Yes.
And,
I'm thinking go ahead.
It's going to be really, I think, helpful too to auditors who have more of a righteous gotcha attitude toward their auditees, who've always, told the auditee, you should have monitoring in place. You should have someone in charge of this. Right. And now that we have to do it, I think it's going to soften and give us a little bit more grace toward the auditees, because we are going to have to do it ourselves. So I think it's going to be good all the way around.
Want to learn more about this topic and earn some NASBA qualifying CPE at the same time? Try the 2024 Yellow Book Interpreted course, which includes a tool to help you comply with the new standards.
And that wraps it up for another episode of The Sample. True to the nature of a sample, we didn't talk about everything, so you've probably got questions. Write to me at lita@yellowbook-cpe.com, and I'll do my best to fill in the blanks. Thanks for playing.